He also talked about them walking through the different temple structures in Nubia and doing what Europeans do. They're pointing out stuff and they're looking at things and they're talking amongst themselves as if they're the God-given expert on everything African.
Right.
And they ignored the people. So you had tons of Nubian people, black African people who lived in these places, these villages, where these temples were on the outskirts of the villages. And the difference between them and what made Dr. Ben such a genius was that he started to talk to the people. So where the white people did not speak to them at all, they treated them as if they were untouchable, he went to his people and he discovered that they knew everything. They pointed out the information on the walls, they read the Meduneter to him, they told him what it said, and they gave him the spiritual understanding of what he was bearing witness to, because they had those traditions that went back to not only the time of the pharaohs, but even further back than that. And what he also said was during that time, he came into contact with his master teacher. And his master teacher was an initiate into what they would call the mystery system. The difference between the large mystery system in Kemet, and I say Kemet meaning the whole African continent at this point, but at this point I'm speaking specifically of Kemet as in Egypt, but we're talking about the whole continent. The difference was in what they call Freemasonry, they only have 33 degrees, but a circle has 360 degrees. So Dr. Ben's teacher was a 360-degree so-called Mason. And he, in turn, eventually initiated Dr. Ben, who also became a 360-degree Mason. So he got the full circle of African teachings. Everything about African culture is cyclical and circular. Everything about European culture is lineal. So they go from here to here, and that's all they see. Africans understood from hundreds of thousands of years ago that everything goes in cycles and circles. And that is why our traditions were a circular tradition. So he basically was able to come into contact because at that time he was struggling with his Jewishness. He was told that there was no such thing as black Jews. All of these things, the disrespect upon his person and his culture and the essence of who he is as an Ethiopian Jew was assaulted by European so-called Jews when he got here. And he discarded it. He said, you keep your religion. I'm going back to my ancestral religion. And that was something he got from his father. So Dr. Ben understood that it's only through the living connection to your ancestors, meaning those Nubian Kushite people that he spoke to like human beings and brothers and sisters, that he got access to liberation. That process that Dr. Ben went through was liberation. That is why he had no problem speaking truth to power. That is why he said, he always said, I am not a good Negro. They never invite me to speak. These white people don't invite me because they are afraid of what I'm gonna say. And that is liberation. And that's what comes with knowing who you are. That is the most important contribution Dr. Ben ever made, is that if you want to be an upright black man with a backbone, you want to stand upright like that Tekken, you have to learn who you are. And to me, he was the Malcolm X, as Ossie Davis called him, our shining black prince. Dr. Ben is our shining black grandfather. As a matter of fact, grandcestor. That's what I call him. He's a grandcestor. He's not an ancestor, he's a grandcestor. Imhotep is a grandcestor. Shikanta Diop, a grandcestor. John Henrik Clark, a grandcestor. And that's what he is to me. He made me a man. He helped to make me become a man. Yes, Ashe.
How many times did you go with him to Kemet?
Actually, I never got to go with him to Kemet. My dad had always wanted to send me with him, and we just couldn't afford to go. So I didn't get to go. I only got to go once thus far, but I plan to go back again. I went in 2007, and I went with a student of his named Renoko Rashidi. When I went with him and my family, and we were there in 2007, and during that time, actually Asa Hilliard had passed away. We talk about that while we were there. But while we were there, I was able to pick up where Renoko Rashidi left off. On our particular trip, he would always give us historical classes where we would deal with the history of Kemet, names of pharaohs, places and dates. But he didn't have the spiritual insight. So he actually, and I'm so grateful for that, he allowed me the ability to actually take over the tour in the temples and be able to discuss the connections between Christianity and Islam and their origins in Kemet just by looking at the walls and breaking down the different friezes and hieroglyphics on the wall, so that the people on the trip could understand that Christianity is African. It's inherently African, and this was something he allowed me to do, so I was very thankful for that.
Whoa.
Yes.
Whoa. Now, there's a new institution of higher learning in Africa.
Okay.
And I happened to meet the vice chancellor
Yes.
of one of these institutions. The thing I'm saying one of them is because of the fact that there are so many writers stretching from West Africa to East Africa and South Africa.
Yes.
So it could not, the institution would not be in Ghana alone.
Right.
But he didn't tell me that there are other institutions. I know about that institution. And the goal of this institution of higher learning is go back
Yes.
to the
Sankofa.
indigenous people and sit down with them and learn certain things. They call it indigenous sciences and knowledges. This is what they plan to do. I was reading your article on the black woman,
Yes.
and something profound I recognized
Okay.
in your writing. As a child growing up, or even right now, anytime we have a ritual,
Yes.
and it has to do with a man, the count is 3.
Okay.
Anytime we have to go through a ritual, and the ritual is about a woman, the count is 4. Now I read that portion
Yes.
in your article where you indicate the X chromosomes
Yes.
and the Y chromosomes.
Absolutely.
In other words, you got the X chromosomes twice with one losing one leg.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the X chromosomes,
Yes.
there are the X,
Right.
it has 4 points,
Yes.
and that's for a woman.
Absolutely.
And the Y has 3 points,
Yes, sir.
and that is for a man.
Yes.
Now, people will say the person who is in the village there, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know anything about chromosomes. How did he come about these numbers, numerals for a woman 4 and numerals for a man 3?
That, for me, there's so many mysteries to indigenous African knowledge that I think is mind-blowing. When Europeans discovered Sirius B in the Orion star constellation, which is a white dwarf star that is non-visible to the naked human eye, and Marcel Griot, I believe, was the person. He wrote the book Pale Fox and Conversations with Ogotameli.
Right.
Speaking about the Dogon tradition, and when Europeans discovered Sirius B, and they started talking to the Dogon before they discovered Sirius B, the Dogon told them about it. Not only did they tell them about it, but they drew an outline of the solar system, and they put that white dwarf star in its correct place.
Right.
White people didn't discover that until probably almost 100 years later.
They even told them about the weight.
Yes, they gave the weight, everything. And these Europeans were shocked. They said, well, how do these people who do not have telescopes know this information? They don't have the actual so-called technology to actually physically see these stars. And I know in Kemet, they found glass in Kemet that goes back thousands of years. Concave glass, so that means glass similar to what would be used in a telescope. We just didn't find a complete telescope.
Okay.
But ultimately, the indigenous elders' ability to discern that the number 4 belongs to a woman because of her chromosomes versus a man is phenomenal, because just like you said, all a man is, and Dr. Ben used to say that men were women turned inside out. And the reason why men have a Y chromosome is missing a stem, it's missing a leg.
Right.
So in other words, men are genetic mutations off of the original female model. And that's what it is. Women are first, they're primary.
Right.
And they also carry the oldest genetic code. Mitochondrial DNA goes back to the first human beings. The male DNA goes back to the first man, but the woman came first. She's primary. And as a result, she's the original human model. So the very first human God thought to create was a female, because the chicken had to come before the egg, or the offspring.
Yes.
So the man is the offspring of the female, and we are mutations off of the female model. That's why we have the similar organs, like we have breasts, just like women have breasts. The difference is, because of her X chromosome, her breasts produce milk.
Develop.
Because of her X chromosome, she can produce life. She gives life. We don't have that ability. We have to depend on our mother to do so. So that is what makes that such a profound thing, that they were able to see and understand that, again, without a microscope. But they understood that women were primary, and that women had more in the sense of more spiritual ability, due to the fact that she is the life giver. She is the life giver. We bestow the life through giving of our seed.
Yes.
But she is the life giver. The mystery of life all takes place in her womb. And that's what makes her so important. And Dr. Ben emphasized that throughout his entire life. There's not a time that went by where he did not make African women understand their beauty and their importance. Absolutely. He worshipped his wife, and he said that he's the one who really changed my whole concept of deity and brought it down to earth. He wasn't into fantasy and mystery. He was into straight reality and understanding of life in an African fashion. And like Dr. Ben used to say, if anything that is anti-life is anti-African. And I'll leave it there. If it's anti-life, it is anti-African. If it's pro-life, it is pro-African.
My goodness. You know, Europeans want us to believe that when you follow Jesus Christ and you die, you go to heaven.
Yes.
Again, in my tradition, Balkanko, we believe that everything that you do here, you're bound to suffer for it right here before you die. So if you think that you're going to go around killing people, think that you are not going to be attacked by somebody, you are lying.
That's right.
So heaven and hell is right here. But still, we know that there's a place that we have to go. When we go to our ancestors, it's like going back home. You don't want to die without going back home.
That's right.
The Haitians say that all what they're having is just to go back to Africa. That is going back home.
That's right.
Why I'm bringing this up is because of the fact that you wrote something in your article, The Black Woman, and broadened heaven to be the womb of the female.
Yes.
Can you enlighten us on that?
Yes. Actually, I think I kind of touched on it earlier. I'll go back to the deity Nut. And as I was previously saying, the black woman was considered heaven. Pepe II was the first person to actually say that. The first person I heard it from was Dr. Ben. And it goes right back to the fact that even God Ra, actually your God, Ra, has a mother. His mother was Nut. And the idea of her importance could never be overstated, because even in African culture, a lot of the innovations as far as the creation of society was all done through the woman. Our culture was all created through the woman. Agriculture was started by the African woman. Matter of fact, when black men were brought here as beasts of burden for the white man, a lot of them felt affronted to have to work in the field, because African men didn't work in the field. It was the women who coaxed. She would coax the soil to bring life forth. So she would talk to Geb.
Right.
She would water Geb, and she would soothe him and coax him into giving life. And that's what makes her important beyond what I spoke with previously. If you study the story of Asar, Set, and Heru, the only way that Asar was able to come back to life was through the love of an African woman. It was her undying love that made Ra bestow the blessings upon her